If you've ever been to an auction or an antique shop, anywhere with a table or two of pottery, you've probably seen someone pick up a piece and look at the bottom. It's a habit that forms quickly, especially if you're looking for hand-turned pots from North Carolina. When in doubt about who made a particular piece, the bottom can sometimes tell you more than the rest of the pot. Most North Carolina potters from the past decade or so have stamped or signed their pottery. For the most part, this is all you'd be looking for. Sometimes a potter would write or stamp the year, or sign their name in addition to a stamp. That is, except for Niola Cole. Niola was the daughter of A.R. Cole, and she probably wrote more on the bottom of pottery in her lifetime than anyone else. She wrote the date, her name, and a whole range of sayings, stories, and commentaries on the day's events, the pottery, or simply the weather. For the rest of the story, I'll have to refer you to this platter she made in 2001.
In 1934, A.R. Cole located his pottery shop just north of Sanford, North Carolina. Before this time, he had a pottery shop in Seagrove, North Carolina. A.R. made pottery for his daddy until he opened his own shop in Seagrove in 1927. A.R. came from a long line of Coles to have made pottery. A.R. was a seventh or eighth generation of potters to make pottery. A.R. passed away in March 1974. He was in the shop working when he had a stroke. His first pottery shop in Sanford went by the name of Rainbow Pottery. In the early 40s, he changed it to A.R. Cole Pottery. Neola reopened the shop in 1976 under the name of Cole's Pottery. Neola had always worked for her daddy. Neola's sister Celia works for her. Also, Neola's grandson works for her. He is a very good potter. Hope his son will take up the trade.
Niola wrote on the bottom of her pots, sometimes extensively, like with that history of her shop, but more often than not, she kept it short.
Hot and humid today, high 90. Made in the USA, just for you. Be nice to all birds, even the jailbirds. Love me always. Ring-eyed Democrats put Reagan in office for 4 more years. Okay, remember, ugly is only skin deep. I have a heart of gold. I'd love to be the one to hold the moonshine for you, lip smacking good. Honey, I will always give you a hoot.
Her grandson, Kenneth George, also sometimes wrote on the pots he turned in the shop. He wrote less often than Niola, but certain occasions seemed to demand it.
Today, terrorists flew 2 airplanes into the World Trade Center. About 1 hour later, both of the Twin Towers fell to the ground. Terrorists also flew a 3rd plane into the Pentagon while a 4th plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania.
Niola, her sister Celia, and Kenneth produced more pottery than they could keep on the shelves, but Niola somehow always found the extra time to write on almost every single piece.
Love me tender. The date on this bowl is correct because this is leap year. Leap year comes around every 4 years. Hi, cutie. Okay, buddy, now that you're trying to lose some weight, you don't need this size plate. Grab a saucer and no refills. Calories don't count, they just multiply. Think big thoughts, but relish small pleasures. Be nice to me. Merry Christmas to you. Celia back at work after being out over a year due to illness.
Of course, the story is never over once you put the pottery back on the shelf. Take this one, for example. I was 9 years old in 2008. When I picked this piece up to take it to the counter, I quickly dropped it on the concrete floor of the shop. You can see the chip off the rim, but you can't see the cracks running throughout the entire vase. It's still one of my favorite pieces of pottery. Here I am in 2006, 2 years before, bothering my dad as he tried to interview Miss Niola. Growing up, I always felt like Niola's shop was a second home, and I know how many other people felt the same way. Stories in the Clay is an attempt to pass along some of the stories Niola scribbled into wet dirt with her number 2 pencils, and the many other stories that grew up around her and her pottery.